and welcome to the Best of the Bets review show, where we look back at a fascinating football season. We also have our nominations for traditional end-of-season awards. We're going to look back at some of the best and worst tipster advice from our experts, Sam and Gareth, and they're already squealing. We are also going to take a sneak peek at next year's season, and we're also announcing the winners of our competition as well. So we've got a massive show to get through. Nice to have you back, Sam and Gareth. We're starting off with Player of the Season. Surely that has to be Gareth Bale.
Well, I think Bale and Van Persie and Suarez probably dominated the headlines for much of the season, and
Suarez not for the right reasons.
Well, no, not by the end of the season. But you know, we like to do things slightly differently on this show, a bit of an alternative angle. And yeah, I've certainly got a couple of players that I think should be highlighted as being, for me, certainly Player of the Year.
Yes, for me, to be honest, I think all three of those at some stage of the season did fade slightly. Maybe that's slightly harsh on Gareth Bale, but Van Persie certainly went through goal droughts, and Suarez certainly blemished his record this season. Yep. But for me, there was one person who remained consistent throughout, who was brilliant all season, despite his club playing a record number of games across 8 competitions, 12 goals in the Premier League, 12 assists in the Premier League. I just thought Juan Mata was absolutely outstanding all season. He was responsible for another 12 goals in Europe, either scoring or creating them. Yep. And it was just a joy to watch at times, and that's really hard to say about someone who plays for a club I despise.
Basically, you spent the entire time I've known Sam slagging off Chelsea.
Just been brilliant this season for me, Juan Mata.
What about Lukaku?
It certainly ended the season very well. And I think a lot of people would maybe expect to see him back in the Chelsea squad next season. But I don't think he really displayed that constantly over the season.
West Brom faded a bit, didn't they? They were on fire at the start of the season and a couple of good results at the end.
But I think you like quite a similar player to Lukaku.
Well, I love a bit of Christian Benteke. I absolutely loved watching him this season. I've signed from Genk. Don't think too many people had heard of him. But you know, it was just impressive straight away. To think back, and there was a huge outcry that everyone said, "Why is Darren Bent not getting a game for Aston Villa? Who's this joker they've put in instead?" And it was all about, well, what's Lambert doing with Bent? This is disgraceful treatment, and what on earth is he doing? But I mean, the player he's signed there, and the player that played all season is 10 times the striker. Could be a real great. For me, Christian Benteke has been my player of the season.
Defenders.
Leighton Baines, I think, was a massive part of Everton's season. Only outfield player to play every minute of the season. And fantastic bombing forward. Still maybe slight question marks about his defending sometimes, but I think he's a real asset for anyone. For
me, someone who I saw regularly who impressed me from the first day of the season was Sasha Rita, who has now made his move permanent to Fulham. He was very much the shining light in a poor season for them. I liked him.
OK, moving on, team of the season. You mentioned Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea played so many games and they didn't falter.
Only had one piece of silverware to show for it, though, did they? And probably not the one they envisaged at the start of the season. So,
well, it was a good one for Rafa.
Yeah,
secured
but
his
I think
move.
we can rule Chelsea out. I think that there are a couple of teams that really stood out this season. I think we saw 2 of them in the Champions League final, and what was a fantastic Champions League final. But I'm not going to go for Bayern Munich. I'm going to go for the team that lost to them in the final and the team that finished 25 points behind them, because I just think that what Jurgen Klopp did there was brilliant, and they were an absolute joy to watch. They got lumbered in an extremely tough Champions League group that no one gave them a chance to qualify. And I think it's like that first time that many of the English public really sort of took note of Dortmund was when they went to the Etihad and just absolutely played the Champions.
They've been so poor last season in the Champions League. That was the surprising thing, because they'd been outplayed by Arsenal last season.
I was lucky enough to be at the Champions League final, and it was just, both teams were just amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously so much speculation about sort of the big stars in their team, like Lewandowski and Goetze. But I think it was often sort of many of the unsung heroes in that team that really sort of made them tick as a unit. And I look at people like Piszczek and Gundogan, Blaszczykowski, just such a fantastic unit. I just love that high pressing game they played all season. It's just fearless throughout against these huge sides of Europe, and they can really count themselves to be up amongst that elite now. It's a shame that it's probably going to get torn apart in the summer, but if Jurgen Klopp stays,
though, isn't it?
Then who's to say they can't come back?
I think one of the things I liked about them was almost their naivety. You know, I mean, it was a bit of a soft goal they conceded to lose that Champions League final. So yeah, fantastic. Loved watching Dortmund.
Anyone else stand out?
But I mean, actually, my team of the season, I'm going to go with Bayern Munich, because at the end of the day,
they won the treble.
Well, they did. The big thing is how they bounced back after last year. I mean, just thinking back, how they didn't win the Champions League last season is one of the biggest mysteries of all time. Really, absolutely battered Chelsea. But to come back, to bounce back and just be so dominant, so impressive,
so focused, so driven. I mean, they strengthened their team, which we mentioned on our Champions League special, and they just were not. They weren't gonna. They were focused. They weren't going to lose this time round.
Those two legs against Barcelona, to win 4-0 at home, 3-0 away, just unbelievable. 7-0. It's still incredible thinking back about it now, just how it felt watching it. So, yeah, for me, Bayern Munich. Obviously, there's a few English teams that have had good seasons. United, obviously, have won the league. A couple of other teams that have exceeded expectations, like the Swansea, Everton, Southampton would get mentions. But team of the year, got to go Bayern Munich.
Now, Sir Alex Ferguson, he won the LMA Manager of the Year. Would we say Manager of the Year?
I wouldn't say Manager of the Year, but I think it's worth just paying tribute to
the accolade of everything that he's done.
Career.
Yeah.
We don't have a Lifetime Achievement Award on the show,
if we did,
we would have to be
giving it to him. But for me, and Gareth talked about Bayern Munich and their great success this season, I think so much credit has to go to Jupp Heynckes, because obviously they missed out on all three competitions last season in sort of pretty distressing circumstances, and he obviously took the summer and he strengthened, as you pointed out, and they hit the ground running, and they were a superb all season, kept up those levels throughout the campaign. Obviously then the news broke that Pep Guardiola was coming in, and he didn't even let that faze him. He just carried on.
Not at all.
Well, he's up the ante, hasn't he, on Pep Guardiola? It's
absolutely. And let's face it, if this Bayern Munich goes on to dominate Europe in the next few seasons, I imagine a lot of people will forget about Jupp Heynckes and how he started it all. But that would be criminal.
Gareth, anyone else stand out for you?
Yeah, I'm going to go into the English league actually. Michael Laudrup. Start of the season, there was an awful lot of supposedly shrewd money for that Swansea were going to be a real team that would struggle this season and be in all kinds of bother. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers had gone off to Liverpool.
And they made history for themselves this season.
Well, they did. Silverware. In the end, they've only finished 8th. I say only. It was certainly they'd have settled for that at the start of the season.
Achievement for
but I mean, they've almost been on autopilot the last few weeks. So I wouldn't rule them out as a possibility to break into the top 6 next season. I think Laudrup's done a great job there. There's some clear areas that Swansea can improve. Getting someone else to score goals apart from Michu would be the most obvious one. But I mean, just for the fact that they did win that silverware, got the Carling Cup.
Yeah. Great achievement for Wigan. I mean, I know that they did get relegated, but they still won the FA Cup.
Well,
huge moment.
Yeah, I mean, Martinez and Wigan provided some fantastic moments this season.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they did get relegated, so I've crossed him off my list of potentials there.
Moments of the season.
There's been a few. It's been quite eventful, hasn't it, at times?
I mean, yeah, that technique of sitting in the car, leaning out the window and telling everyone he was getting a move to QPR. Certainly.
Peter as a winger.
that was my moment of the season, surely. You've rarely seen technique, that one.
Very enjoyable tuning into Sky Sports News that night.
I just couldn't believe it at all.
That was good. I particularly enjoyed Eden Hazard taking a big old swing at the ball boy at Swansea away. It was right up there for me.
And it was one of the director's sons as well.
Yeah, and the general incredible reaction of various pundits in. I can't understand what he's been sent off or what's he done wrong.
He's kicked a child.
Quite bizarre.
Mine has to be the signing for Manchester United of Robin van Persie. That was right,
How can that compete with a load of Tottenham fans celebrating a non-existent equaliser for Newcastle?
How can that compete with Luis Suarez getting a bit peckish halfway through?
Do excuse me if I suddenly have a nibble on Sam's arm. But yeah, as always, there's been some magnificent incidents thrown up. My moment of the season, you touched it actually. I think the Wigan winning goal against Manchester City. Yeah. Not for any. I think most of my other moments of the season are all related to bets I'd had, but that was purely just fantastic.
Yeah,
The
it
underdogs
was.
have
Yeah.
gone. They've outplayed
Yeah.
City for 90 minutes. It'd be brilliant if they nick a winner, and they did. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. Moment of the season for me.
My moment of the season is also late drama, but it came in the Championship playoff semi-final when Watford played Leicester, when Leicester had a penalty.
Justice done.
To progress, a very dubious penalty, and with what we thought was the last kick of the game, well over injury time that had been allocated, and it was saved by Manuel Almunia. The rebound was saved by him, and then the ball went down the other end of the field, with Watford fans still celebrating that save, and then they scored to take themselves to Wembley, and great pitch invasion, great scenes.
Don't think you can ever tire of watching the footage of various different things, crowd reactions, Sky Sports reaction.
And it was very similar to something that had happened at Brentford when Brentford had the chance to win automatic promotion.
I'm trying to forget that.
Yeah, sorry. And that penalty was missed, and then Doncaster went down the other end and scored and became champions of League One. And they said that will never happen again, and then it happened a week later. So, astonishing moment. Also, a personal one. After 25 years of going to football and visiting over 120 grounds, I finally got to be part of my first ever floodlight failure.
Hey!
That was the noise I made. For Manchester United, it was that was a very entertaining night.
Best bet of the season?
Well, I had to look back over them, and there were a few good moments for me. I think
you marked out Jan Vertonghen, if I do remember.
That was a good moment. Yeah, Jan Vertonghen at 17 to score first against Swansea. It was his first goal for Tottenham. I also had Ramirez as a first goal scorer for Chelsea against Wigan, and I did call Shakhtar Donetsk to Borussia Dortmund 2 in the Champions League meeting. But I think personally, my favourite one, I put it up as my best bet that week, was Sunderland to win at Newcastle after the Canio's just taken over. A lot of people were very dubious about that appointment.
Me included.
Sunderland were rotten at the time, possibly still are, but they produced a fantastic performance that day, and Sunderland to win that at 4.3 was probably my best bet.
I think actually the bet that stood out from the best bets on the show was Wigan to win at Everton, actually, because I've been so bullish about Everton, and I think probably quite critical of Wigan in the weeks running up to that. But everything just seemed... You
lost your love affair with Everton and swapped it for Southampton.
Well, you've got to be very fickle in this game, because you don't want to get too attached to anyone. Yeah, it just seemed so inevitable that Everton were going to win, and everyone was adamant, oh, this is it. Yeah, marching at the Cup semi-finals, but just something wasn't right at Goodison just those couple of days, and the players weren't right on the day, and Wigan were fantastic.
We've talked about best. What about worst? And I'm not included in this.
Well, I think if you... a lot of my bets are always teams that are outsiders to win games, so you're not necessarily expecting that they're all going to win. Yeah, I mean, the bet that sticks out was the Valencia versus Real Madrid game, because I've been quite negative about Valencia for a lot of the season, but there were so many question marks about Real Madrid going into the game that I thought, Valencia at home looks good to me, get involved there, and to be 5-0 down at half-time was, it's one thing you bet losing, but another thing for you bet to be 5-0 down at half-time.
5-0 is nothing, because I got a bit bullish about Aston Villa just before Christmas.
I remember you saying that two words for you, Christina. Aston Villa.
Aston and of course Villa.
Yes, and I tipped them up to win at Chelsea at 9.9, which is pretty much a point for every goal they conceded that day, because they were beaten 8-0, and I remember watching that in the pub, having a few Christmas drinks with my friends, and felt very embarrassed, and quite rightly.
Now, we've actually created our own tally of best bets, me included in this. Thank you to the bosses for including me in this.
Like, come dine with me.
Who's
in fourth spot? It's me.
Oh.
But that is my own. Can I just say that is my own fault for supporting Newcastle week after week after week. Mike came in third. Sam, you came in second. And Gareth, top prize goes to you with the best bets. Well done.
Well done.
Pulled off a close one.
That's it for part one. Join us after the break where we look at next season, and we'll also announce the winners from our competition.
Betting site from Poker Heaven.